The Light Beyond the Shadows. In a small, forgotten village nestled in the heart of a distant valley, life unfolded in simple rhythms. The houses, made of crumbling clay, leaned together as if supporting each other's weary weight. One of these houses, a tiny shack with a rusted tin roof, belonged to Anya, a quiet girl with eyes that carried the burden of untold stories. Poverty clung to her life like the persistent fog that wrapped around the hills every morning, yet Anya had always believed that the soul could still seek beauty. Every day, she would walk the dusty path to the village well, her bare feet tracing the same steps etched by hardship. Her mother had passed away when Anya was just a child, leaving behind only a faint memory of lullabies sung under a starless sky. Her father, a broken man, spent his days lost in silence, his spirit worn thin by years of toil. Anya's days were filled with labor. She worked in the fields, hands roughened by thorns and sun, harvesting crops she would never taste. Each evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, she returned home, carrying an ache in her back and a flicker of hope in her heart. In her solitude, Anya often gazed at the stars, whispering dreams to the night. One afternoon, as she knelt by the well, a stranger's voice broke through her thoughts. "Do you need help with that?" Startled, Anya turned to see a young man with gentle eyes and a warm smile. His name was Arav, a traveler who had arrived in the village to visit his distant relatives. Unlike the others who saw only her tattered clothes and dirt-streaked face, Arav seemed to see something more. Anya, shy and uncertain, simply nodded. Arav drew the heavy bucket from the well with ease and handed it to her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, a connection sparked, a fragile thread that seemed to bridge the distance between their worlds. Days passed, and Arav would often find reasons to visit the fields where Anya worked. He brought stories of distant lands, tales that painted vivid pictures of places she had only dreamed of. In his presence, the weight of her reality seemed to lift, if only for a little while. One evening, as they sat beneath an old banyan tree, Arav spoke softly. "Anya, you have a strength I've never seen before. You deserve a life beyond this place." Tears welled in her eyes. "Dreams are for those who can afford them," she whispered. Arav reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Sometimes dreams are the only things that keep us alive." Their conversations became a refuge, a sanctuary where Anya could dare to imagine a different future. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that love could be more than a distant fantasy. It could be a lifeline. But the village was not kind to dreamers. Gossip spread like wildfire, tongues wagging about the poor girl who dared to hope. Her father, once indifferent, now grew angry. "We are not people who chase fantasies," he warned. "Love will not fill our stomachs." Anya felt torn between the duty she owed her father and the light that Arav had awakened within her. One evening, after a particularly harsh confrontation, she ran to the banyan tree, tears streaming down her face. Arav was waiting, concern etched into his features. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "My life is not my own." Arav held her close, his voice steady. "Then we'll change that. Come with me, Anya. I'll take you away from here." The idea was intoxicating. To leave behind the weight of her past, to step into a world where poverty would no longer define her. Yet the thought of abandoning her father, the land that held her mother's memories, tied her in knots. Days turned into weeks. Arav's time in the village was drawing to a close. The evening before his departure, they met one last time beneath the banyan tree. The air was thick with unspoken words. "I'll wait for you," he promised. "When you're ready, find me." As Arav walked away, Anya felt the world close in around her. The days that followed were filled with a hollow silence. The fields seemed emptier, the sky duller. Her father's health declined, and she cared for him with a quiet devotion, burying her dreams beneath layers of duty. One night, as she sat by her father's bedside, he spoke in a voice weakened by regret. "Your mother, she was like you. She dreamed of a different life. I never let her have it. Don't make the same mistake." Tears streamed down Anya's face. In his words, she heard a permission, a blessing she had never thought she would receive. The next morning, with nothing but a small bundle of belongings, she left the village. The journey to Arav's town was long, each step a mixture of fear and exhilaration. When she finally arrived, she found him waiting at the edge of the bustling market. His smile, wide and genuine, felt like the sun breaking through a storm. "You came," he whispered, disbelief and joy mingling in his voice. Anya nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I'm ready. Together, they built a new life. Arav, with his gentle encouragement, helped her discover a strength she hadn't known she possessed. She learned to read, to write, and eventually found work that allowed her to support herself. The girl who had once labored in the fields now walked with a quiet confidence, her past no longer a shackle, but a reminder of how far she had come. Their love, tested by hardship and sacrifice, grew deeper with each passing day. Arav never tried to erase her past. He honored it, weaving it into the fabric of their shared story. Together, they built a small home, one where laughter echoed and dreams were nurtured. Years later, as Anya stood beneath a familiar banyan tree now planted in their garden, she watched the stars with Arav by her side. I used to whisper my dreams to the night, she said softly. I never thought they would hear me. Arav wrapped his arm around her, his voice filled with quiet reverence. Sometimes the stars listen when we need them most. In that moment, Anya realized that her journey had not been one of escape, but of transformation. Love had not saved her, it had given her the courage to save herself. The girl who had once believed dreams were a luxury now knew that they were a necessity, a beacon that had led her through the darkest of nights into a dawn she had once only imagined. And in the quiet of that evening, beneath a sky full of stars, Anya knew that even in the poorest of lives, love could bloom, and with it, the promise of something more.